I'm Mike.
I'm Jason.
This is Snake Envy. Uh, we have told everyone that we're going to give you a feeding tip before every video for a little bit because this is such an intensive topic. We get a ton of questions and it's really difficult to cover it in its entirety in one video. But let's talk about live prey. You, at various times of the year, always have snakes that you're feeding live. Let everyone know some of the reasons why you turn to live prey versus frozen. I mean, obviously, when a snake won't eat frozen, but are there specific reasons beyond that?
There is a few. Luckily I have a source to where I'm able to get live pretty regularly. I like to in the spring my little North American North American milk snakes, like from the States. My red milks, my Easterns, my my Pels, like all those little small milk snakes. I feed them fuzzies. I'll throw in like 5 or so at a time, and they'll just gobble them down like Pac-Man. But I started doing that because sometimes they would refuse frozen thawed, and it's breeding season, so you want the weight to be there, the nutrition for them to develop eggs. So that's one reason.
Gotcha. So coming out of brumation, sometimes the frozen thawed just isn't enough to kind of trigger them and get them eating well.
Well, it is, but it's just like it can be better. And when it's live, they go a little more. They go after the live prey a lot more. So I've done it to boost my egg totals in my North American milks. One thing that's weird, I have a tiger bull snake. Pain in the butt. There's one live.
And this is an adult.
No.
Oh.
It's a yearling.
A yearling.
But it's like, so it wants live, and my partner had it, John, and he doesn't have access to live, and so what I did, and it's a bull snake. It's like, why just eat?
Yeah. Normally they'll eat.
So I fed it live for like 4 weeks. Now it's tearing stuff off the tongues, frozen thawed. So it's kind of I use that as a stimulant to reactivate snakes sometimes. Live prey. Especially when a lot of snakes will go off feed, and they might go off for 3 months, and I don't even care. Like, you'll eat when you're hungry. But sometimes you have important snakes, and you need them. You need them.
Or a particular time of the year is coming, and you want to try to speed it along. It's inherent in snakes to be triggered by that live prey, and just because they've eaten frozen thawed for a while, that doesn't mean there's not times when. So, for those of you that are out there kind of frustrated with those seasonal fasts and things like that, our advice, we mentioned this before, but just be patient. Don't try to feed every other week, not every week. That way you'll waste less prey, you'll be less frustrated. But once you get to a certain point and they're out there a couple months, try a live prey at them. By the way, mom and pop pet stores, that's usually your best source for live prey. The big chain stores, they don't sell live, but virtually all mom and pops will, particularly if they sell reptiles. So, that's where you can get live prey. Now, I have one personal rule for live prey, and that's no rats. When snakes are big enough to eat rats, I will not feed live rats. And even when I feed adult mice, like jumbo mice, a lot of times what I'll do is hang on to the prey by the tail with the tongs. So the prey is alive, it's moving, it triggers the snake, but you're giving the snake an advantage by not having the prey run around the enclosure. Rats, I just personally will not do live rats. The big difference between rats and mice is that rats can actually be aggressive. Mice, they're typically not going to go after a snake until the snake's already gone after them. But rats, man, once they realize they're in the enclosure with a predator, they can actually be the aggressor.
Well, and they're so much larger.
And they're so big.
But I've seen horrid things from mice.
Yeah.
I've seen, like, this is on me and my partner, old partner. But when we first started getting into this, we had some Mexican blacks, and my partner forgot to pull the live mounts out, because we bred mice back then.
Stayed overnight.
That thing ate a big chunk out of that snake. You could see spine exposed. Like, do not leave your live rodents in for more than, I would say, 12 hours. But usually it's around 24, 48 hours when they'll turn the tables. But it's like, why risk it?
No, my rule is the live mouse only stays in there as long as I'm willing to sit there and watch. Typically, if a snake doesn't go for live prey right away, it's probably not going to eat, probably not interested. So I may give it 5 or 10 minutes if it looks like the snake is even, flicking the tongue and sniffing around and looks like it might be headed that way. But I just offer that tip because if you do have adult prey, whether they be big mice or rats, if you hang on to the prey with the tongs and just let it kind of scurry in the substrate, you're getting the same effect, but you're able to yank it away if the prey turns aggressive. So just be careful with adult prey. My rule is only supervised. I would never leave live prey alone with a snake. Yeah. But let's talk about fuzzies and hoppers and pinkies, because those can't harm your animal. Yeah. And do not be afraid to let those be for 24 hours.
I let them
and just let them go overnight.
Mm-hmm.
But even 24 hours is fine. And again, if the snake's not interested after 24 hours, it's probably just not interested. It's not
going to.
But one of the things I wanted to mention, though, is like where you're saying, hey, 5 fuzzies. Well, even with a little bigger snake than a milk snake, 3 or 4 hoppers can take the place of an adult mouse. And those you don't have to supervise. You can just leave those overnight and let the snake go to town. So keep that in mind. Smaller prey, multiple prey, and then the safety part of it kind of goes away. And then you can leave them overnight, and typically a snake is going to eat overnight. Whether it's frozen thawed or live, leaving it overnight just increases the odds. A lot of times they don't want to eat while we're standing there watching, but just know that live prey is okay to feed. I know there's going to be people out there with ethical concerns or who just don't want to do it. That's fine, but that's part of taking on a snake is at some point you may have to feed it live prey in order to get it eating.
Do what works for you.
Also, transitioning to frozen thawed. People always say, hey, it's been eating live, it's eating well, it eats every week, but now how do I get it transitioned? Same thing. Smaller prey item. So if your snake's big enough for a mouse, an adult mouse, go to hoppers, feed it 2 or 3. But what you do is you feed the first one live, and then you follow it right away with frozen thawed while that food response is still high. And that's usually the best way to transition. Just get a live one down and then immediately offer the next one.
Or like the next, that works pretty well. I like to go live, and then I'll do a frozen thawed eventually. Yeah. But I'll use tongs and I'll play around while, and simulate the activity. Live. Yeah. And I have a Great Basin gopher snake. She's 2 years old and she just has been a pain in my butt. I started feeding her fuzzies for a while and small little hoppers, more like smaller than hoppers, but but she would tear those up, and then all of a sudden I started dangling frozen thawed in her. She's just ripping them off the tongues.
And it's always good to go smaller, because if your snake is taking a large mouse and you give it the live large mouse, well, it may not want a second one. So dial the prey back in size, and then you're more likely it's going to take multiples. But, whether it's different prey items or whether it's live to frozen thawed, typically if you can just get that first one down, that's typically all it takes. And then from that point on, they'll usually keep going. But if you have to repeat that process 2 or 3 weeks in a row, do a couple live, then do a frozen, that's fine. But usually if you can just get that first one down, they go, oh, all right.
Yeah. And then like
this is good.
Yeah. And then like with like naturally like gray bands and mountain kings and stuff that don't want to eat like pinky mice, because they want lizards. I have a whole bag of tricks. But the one trick I want to share right now is like, it's not really so much a trick, but it's like, so this thing's eating live. Try a frozen thawed, won't eat it. Go back to live a couple times, then I'll starve them. Like I'll wait a few weeks, and then because they know what food is at this point, and they want it.
They recognize it as food.
That's how I get them to switch over a lot of times. I was like, get them wanting food, and then cut it off, and then give it the frozen thawed, and usually that works pretty well for me. Yeah,
if they've fed good for 3-4 weeks, then back off a couple 3 weeks and get them good and hungry again.
Yeah, and live works really well for hatchlings because the movement.
Yeah, it gets them going. So, yeah, live prey, I just view it as a sometimes necessity in the hobby. At some point, you may have to try live prey. And I get it if people have ethical concerns or don't want to do it, but you may have chosen the wrong pet if you're just adamant that I'll never do that, because sometimes that's the easiest way to get a snake eating.
Well, I feel
so at least be open to it.
I feel for people that don't have access to live or don't want to even try it.
Occasionally people don't have easy access. That's a different story.
It's usually manageable when you have 50 snakes or less, but when you start getting hundreds, it's like, these guys are a pain in the butt. I need to, so trigger them.
But just know live prey, sometimes that's all it takes, whether it's a seasonal fast, maybe you buy a feeding snake from a breeder, you get it home, and for whatever reason you can't get it eating again. Sometimes that live prey just snaps them back in and gets the habit going.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Keep it in mind. But be safe. Definitely be careful if you're feeding live adult prey. All right, let's dive into our topic. So we talked about the Jeremy Stone situation a couple weeks ago. He was the guy juggling the ball pythons at the reptile show. We got some good comments and good questions, and we want to touch on a topic that came out of that. By the way, somebody told us, they said, hey, Jeremy just didn't smuggle snakes into the country or juggle snakes. It's not just smuggling, juggling. He also wasn't very honest when it came to 100% hats and things like that. So, it's good. People, there's some information out there now about a guy that, maybe people shouldn't deal with. But it also raised an interesting question, which is much of how this hobby operates between breeders and consumers is on trust. So how important to you is your reputation?
It's everything. Looks like she's done now.
What have we got here?
This is a red milk. This is a hypo red milk. Dave Niles line. See these little patches of white in the red saddles. That's kind of something funky new. We'll see if that can. It hasn't been inheritable so far, but maybe one day we'll get some weird looking pied red milk or something from this.
Interesting. How many? Let's take a look at the cooler real quick. Well, how many have we got so far?
We got a lot. I mean, not a lot, but we got about 100. We got about 130 eggs so far. Good eggs.
So we're about 3 rows deep already. Those look like some bull snakes.
Bull snakes here. I'll show you a few. Here's some milks and bulls.
Nice. So 3 rows deep in the cooler already. We just about got one cooler down.
We're cruising.
And you mentioned, we're not going to bother one, but you mentioned you've got somebody about to lay or has just started laying. What's going on with that one?
That is a bumblebee bull project.
Nice.
So hopefully we get better results than last year. Last year was pretty disappointing. We'll know tomorrow.
Fantastic. What's in that one there?
Nothing but these milk snakes are going in here.
Milks are going to go in here. Let's show Jason putting away the eggs.
Spare him a little bit. Keep the moisture on. I make my vermiculite really dry, so.
Fantastic. More to come.
I was on a podcast last Sunday, and I was pretty strong about that. Yeah, trust is like, I trust a lot of people until I don't have, like in this hobby, you have to trust people.
Yeah, you do.
And until I have a reason not to, then yeah. But my word is everything. Like, my business is hinging on that. Like,
exactly.
Do I want to be out of this business like Jeremy Stone? No, I don't. And so I'm going to be straight and honest with you guys, like with everything, And so, yeah, like, there's all, the origin of animals is that, like, that's one of the biggest stress things, the lineage, the background, all that information. And so just be straight, like, you don't want, unless you don't want to be in the business very long, but.
Well, somebody asked the question. They said, hey, how come I've never encountered a breeder who gives me like a written pedigree of, the snake I'm buying? And my answer was, well, number one, we don't have like governing organizations or bodies that oversee this hobby. So if you're talking about purebred dogs, you might have the American Kennel Club, and they work with the breeders to formalize those pedigrees and put them online. And you can track it because there's somebody overseeing it, and there's somebody putting it online in addition to whatever the breeder gives you. I have relatives who raised horses and bred horses. Same thing. The American Quarter Horse Association is the reason that those pedigrees exist. We don't have that in this hobby. We don't have the government body or the governing body to say, hey, Jason, we noticed an error in your pedigree, and there's nobody to go complain to, and those bodies don't exist. So that's mostly why that sort of thing is not typical. Now, I do know there are some breeders out there that give people written pedigrees, but tell me this, how good is that pedigree if that breeder has ever purchased snakes from another breeder?
Yeah, well, and then you start mixing and matching, and
Yeah, the pedigree is only as good as the trust from the other breeder. So unless the other breeder is also keeping written pedigrees, there is a point where it's only as good as what the other guy says. And again, there's nobody overseeing it all. So we operate on trust largely. Now let me ask you a couple other questions that came out of that. Let's talk about the hets just a little bit. When you tell someone, I'm selling you a pair of snakes that are 100% het for this, what exactly does that mean in terms of the breeding? And will they know that first year, or
they won't?
The first year they breed.
Yeah, the first year they breed. I mean, I try to track everything. There's sometimes I don't, and I know, and like sometimes you just get surprises. A lot, like you get a lot of surprises with me, good ones, genetically, that way.
But you don't tell customers, yeah, I don't know what these are.
Oh no.
So
I try to list everything.
Yeah, but if you mark a pair of snakes as 100% het, and there's a common trait that they're both 100% het, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean you're 100% guaranteed that het is going to hit every year? What percentage of the clutch is going to hit? What exactly does 100% het mean?
100% is a guarantee. Now, if you don't produce something that you bought and it was het for this or that, and you don't get it, yeah, you can. That's when it's okay to approach the breeder and say, hey, you said this, right, and this didn't happen. Now, I've seen weird stuff like where people's bred het to het and didn't get any visuals that year. And I've heard people complain and call and bitch and gripe and then the next year it hits. Like,
well,
so
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So you
gotta be a little patient.
You can breed het to het and get all hets.
Or at that point they would be possets, but
right. But you can breed het to het and also get visuals.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a little patience involved in that process because the very first breeding, you may not get the visuals.
Yeah, and especially when you're talking about like snakes like Zanata, Pyro, like they have 3 or 4 eggs. Like,
right.
You know, your het to het, your ratio, your odds on percentage of hitting is 1 out of 4 babies.
Right.
If you only have 5 eggs, you just may have and didn't get any. You just had shitty odds.
Right. It's almost like a lottery ticket to a degree, mm-hmm. but you're guaranteeing that genetic is there, but there is some patience involved. So, and the reason I bring that up is because we also have to be mindful as hobbyists and as consumers that we should go to the breeder first and say, hey, what should I expect? I didn't get any visuals. What does that exactly mean? And what does that mean for next year, etc.? And I had this many eggs. Don't go running to social media and don't go running to Morph Market right away and trash the breeder and say, hey, don't trust this guy. Don't believe a word he says. Yeah. But after the, I don't know, 3rd year, second year, I mean, when is it fair to say, I think you lied or you made a mistake?
Usually the 2nd year, for sure.
Yeah, by the 2nd year, you should see something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned surprises. You don't always know everything your snakes are carrying, particularly
sometimes I didn't document well.
Well,
prior.
Or a breeder sells you a pair of snakes and maybe they didn't know they were het for a 3rd het, but they told you about 2.
Yeah.
And year 2, you get a surprise and a clutch, and it's like, whoa, those things do happen as well. No matter how well intentioned everybody is, sometimes we don't even know what the snakes are carrying until you breed them. And until you breed this one and this one, you don't know what combination you're going to get.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, most of the time I list possibles, but there's occasions where I don't.
Yeah.
I know people's hit the jackpot like a few times with animals. I've had stuff like possible hets, like 50 or 60% pos hets, bull snake, you know, just a normal. I remember one year specifically, this has been a long time ago too, like probably 15 years, but I had 2 female bulls that were pos hets for multiple things. Like, I couldn't sell those bull snakes. Like, I know market's different now, but I had those things listed for $40. No one would touch them. I kept them. I bred them to a powerhouse, and I hit the lottery, like on both of them. Like, all of a sudden you get $3,000 clutches because you get all these crazy stuff in there, and and so that happens. Like, people like, oh, I hate the thought of 66. That's not a guarantee, but those 66ers, they really pan out a lot of times. They have for me, like.
Well, and it depends on how long the breeder's been working with those hets as well. I mean, a breeder who's been developing that het line for, a decade, those 67% hets, they're probably more likely to hit than the guy who says, hey, it should be this, should be that, but hey, I've only bred them once, twice. Some of that comes into play as well. I mean, breeders know their animals and they know what's likely to hit.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know how genetics work, and so they kind of wing it a little bit, or they're misinformed how things work. And
but the more established a breeder, the more trustworthy a breeder is in the hobby, and the better the reputation they have. Pretty good likelihood those 67s are going to hit. But
66.
66 points, 66.666.
Yeah.
But pretty good chance those are going to hit when you're talking about a reputable long-term breeder, particularly if they've been working with a particular line for a long time. But that breeder who's only in the game now for 2-3 years, like you say, maybe they don't quite understand with a particular species how it all works.
Yeah, I remember doing a show in Daytona. Granted, this is 2008. It was bull snakes. We're talking about bull snakes. And I had I had quad hats, 100% hat for quad, 4 genes.
4 different traits.
Well, I had a guy go, I have quads too. And I'm like, oh yeah, what the hat for? Or he said triple. And he goes, they're hat for albino, they're hat for whiteside, and albino, whiteside, and normal. And just because you got 4 variation doesn't mean it's a quad hat. Like,
right.
That's not how it works.
Right.
But
the terminology's off.
Some people just don't get it, and we'll learn. Just learn.
Yeah.
We'll learn. We get better.
But I do think it's important for everybody to understand that even though this hobby, runs mostly on trust, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if people value their reputation, they're going to live up to that. But we do have a responsibility as hobbyists and as consumers and pet owners to not go calling, every little thing out. And always go to your breeder first. A reputable breeder is going to make it right one way or the other.
I've noticed the trend lately of people just wanting to tear others down and for this and that.
And social media just makes it too easy to do that.
It's too easy. It's too convenient.
Talk to your breeder. Give your breeder an opportunity to make things right. All right, guys, we have told you a lot about our Gopher Gulch project, our wild-caught breeding project that we're doing. And as we've said before, we found a very interesting population of Great Basin gopher snakes here in northern Utah. And we want to show you an example. This is a snake that was found literally this morning. And what's interesting about this guy is you've got about 4 different morphs as you go down the length of his body, and they all match morphs that we have found at this location prior. So starting up here, you've got kind of a conda pattern with the dots, very similar to some other species where you see that conda pattern. And then a little bit of the patternless that is very desirable from this location and that we're really targeting this spring. We're still hoping to find a female patternless. We have only found males. But in this section here, very patternless. And then as you come down here, we've got what we're calling kind of a tiger stripe, where you have these alternating bands, these alternating stripes. We have found snakes with part or all of these morphs. And now we've got a male here where just about every one of them is represented in one snake. The other thing that's really great about this population, the normal heads and necks. So you've got the gopher snake heads that we all love, and then it's just a matter of what's going on down here in the body. So this is a great one. So who knows? Visually we got 3 or 4 different things going on here. The other thing we see in this population is kind of a ghost, where the patterns are really faded, really muted, and we've got some of that going on here too. So who knows? Is this guy carrying any of those genes that can be passed on? Is it a visual anomaly? We don't think so. So it's going to be interesting to see, as this guy breeds here this spring, what we're able to get. But the quest continues for a patternless female adult. That continues to elude us. We cannot find an adult patternless. And I was very excited this morning when this one turned up. Thought maybe we had her, but not yet. We will keep looking, and we'll keep you updated A reputable breeder they will make it right one way or the other. They may also just clue you into a little information like we were talking about. Okay, you didn't get the visuals this year, but you should next. Just give the breeder an opportunity to maybe educate you a little, walk you through things, and, and give a breeder ultimately the opportunity to make things right. Always, always, always do that, please, rather than just trashing people's reputations, trashing people's livelihoods. Reputable breeders value their reputation, and they'll work with you.
Yeah, and not even just businesses, but just reputations.
Yeah,
and everybody deserves to be treated equal and kind, and so.
And once in a while, you make a mistake. You misgender a snake, or do it.
I've done it plenty. I've had a customer, a friend, giving me crap because I sent him another male. Like that's like, but it's like it's an honest mistake. It happens. And I'm pretty good at making that better.
I remember at a reptile show we were at last year, there was a woman, a breeder, who was buying snakes from you, and she was adamant about resexing them. And it was busy, and there were multiple people we were helping, and we were kind of put off by, hey, we sex them, this is right. But
I don't think that's out of the
no, it isn't. But it was just busy, and it was hectic, and we were like, oh, okay. And sure enough, one of them was wrong. And now we were fortunate because we had what she needed there, and we made it right. And we said, hey, good catch. And again, a reputable breeder is going to be willing to do that no matter how busy, no matter what's going on. It's like, okay, yeah, let's reassure you and let's sex them again.
And if you get your snakes in the mail and you have the means, not everybody knows how. I had a guy send me photos of the snake today and ask if I could sex it, and I'm like, I can't be 100% sure in photos. But don't wait 3 years to find out you have two males or two females. I'm guilty of that. I've done it to myself with my own animals I held back. Breeders have done that to me. It's happened more times than I can count. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating, but it's it's especially really frustrating when you're a newbie and you have 6 pairs of snakes and you go to breed them and
they're all wrong.
It's wrong, or one of them's wrong, or several.
The key one is wrong. Yeah. So
and it's make sure.
And it's harder to make things right 3 years later.
I am dealing with that right now.
Yeah.
With a guy.
So check your snakes right when you get them. Any final thoughts just on, it's not necessarily a bad thing we operate on trust as long as breeders and everybody, value their reputations, which the vast majority do.
Yeah. Until we have something in place, there's really not money into it to do something to get. Maybe if you're dealing with $20,000 pythons or whatever you're dealing, but
then maybe
you're dealing with $100 colubrids. Your paperwork's gonna be hard.
Well, and you might be dealing with DNA. And something more sophisticated if the snakes are that valuable. But you're right. The average colubrid price is in the $100 or $200 range. So it's hard to justify.
You want to add more cost on there.
Wanting to add a whole bunch more cost. And the trust thing has worked for a very long time for the most part. It's a catch-22 because people can be too quick to go to social media and they can really damage people's reputations carelessly. But at the same time, it's such leverage that we have as consumers for breeders to know that, hey, if I don't treat people right, people are going to know about it.
This hobby will police itself. If you burn one person or continually to burn people or scam people, you're going to be out of there. You're going to be ran right out of this hobby.
Yeah.
And so it does police itself somewhat.
It works pretty well.
Yeah.
Just don't abuse that privilege as a consumer. Don't be so quick to the trigger
Right.
that you call someone out when they don't deserve it. All right, please like, subscribe, comment. You know the drill, but let us know in the comments, what experiences have you had, and give us some examples of good, bad, where breeders have done the right thing, or where you have questions about what should have happened in this particular case. Thank you.
Thanks.